You know, there's something rather strange that happens to certain people. They walk into a room and feel everything, the tension between two friends, the sadness hiding behind a smile. And for most of our lives, we're told this is a gift, right? This ability to pick up on what others can't see. But I want to offer you a different perspective. What if this variability, this clear seeing, is actually one of the most dangerous things you can possess? Now, I don't mean danger in the physical sense. I'm not talking about harm or violence. I'm talking about something quieter, more subtle, a kind of psychological danger that comes from being too awake in a world that survives on a certain level of sleep. Have you ever watched people at a party? Really watch them. It's a fascinating thing. There's this unspoken agreement that everyone plays along with. You ask how someone's doing. They say, fine, and you both pretend that's the whole truth. You smile, laugh at half-funny jokes, nod politely at stories you've already heard. The goal isn't honesty, it's smoothness. Keep things pleasant, stay on the surface. But then there's you, the one who sees beneath it all. You notice the wife who flinches ever so slightly when her husband interrupts. You sense the friend who's drowning in loneliness, even while surrounded by laughter. You feel the subtle pulse of anxiety rippling through the group like an invisible current. And that's where the danger begins. Because once you see these things, you can't unsee them. Worse still, your awareness becomes a kind of mirror, one that people can't stand to look into. When you perceive deeply, you're essentially revealing the truths everyone has silently agreed to ignore. And people don't like this, not because they're bad or stupid, but because it threatens the illusion that makes their lives feel manageable. Think of it like a stage play. Society functions beautifully as long as everyone stays in their role. The successful entrepreneur, the loving parent, the loyal friend. Each role has a costume, a script, and the play runs smoothly when no one breaks character. But you, with your piercing awareness, you're like the audience member who suddenly stands up and shouts, "Wait!" That's just an actor. Imagine how unwelcome that would be. That's the first danger. Isolation. Not the simple kind of loneliness that comes from lacking friends, but a deeper kind. The loneliness of existing in a completely different reality from everyone around you. You speak a language no one else understands. You see a world no one else can see. And the more you perceive, the more alone you become. I once knew someone like this. Let's call her Sarah. She had an extraordinary gift for reading people. She could walk into any room and instantly sense who was genuine, who was hurting, who was pretending. But over time, this gift became unbearable. Her friends drifted away. Not because she was harsh or judgmental, but because they felt seen, too seen. They couldn't keep their masks on around her. She made them uncomfortable simply by existing. They'd say things like, "You're too intense," or "You read too much into everything." Some even accused her of being dramatic, as though her ability to see truth made her fragile or paranoid. But the truth is, once you start seeing clearly, you can't just turn it off. It's not like a light switch. It's more like hearing. Once you have ears, you can't not hear sound. That's the curse of perception. It's always on, always running in the background, always showing you the things people would rather keep hidden. And that brings us to the second danger. The impossible choice between truth and belonging. When you see what's really going on beneath the surface, you face a question that never has an easy answer. Do you speak up, or do you stay silent? If you speak, you risk rejection. Not reasoned disagreement, but something much more primal, defensiveness. You'll be labeled as a negative, too sensitive, or a troublemaker. You'll be told you're reading too much into things, or worse, that you're imagining problems that don't exist. But if you stay silent, if you swallow what you see pretending not to notice, something even more dangerous happens. You begin to lose contact with yourself. Every time you deny your own perception to make others comfortable, every time you accept someone else's false version of reality when you know it's false, you send a quiet message to yourself. I can't trust what I see. And over time, that creates a split. One part of you knows the truth, while another part has to pretend it doesn't. That's not peace. That's quiet madness. I remember sitting in a meeting once where everyone was patting themselves on the back, celebrating how well a project was going. But I could feel it. The whole thing was falling apart. The fake enthusiasm, the avoidance of uncomfortable topics, the nervous laughter. The truth was right there, obvious, but invisible to everyone else. When I gently suggested that maybe we should take a closer look at some issues, I wasn't met with curiosity. I was met with hostility, sharp, defensive, almost panicked hostility. And that leads us to the third danger: projection. When you see what others don't want to see, they often make you the problem. Not consciously, of course, but unconsciously, they begin to treat you as the threat. This is the classic shoot the messenger dynamic. When someone points out that the emperor has no clothes, the crowd doesn't thank them for their honesty. The crowd turns on them, not because they love the lie, but because the truth would shatter the illusion that keeps them safe. So instead of facing what's real, they label you. You're negative, you're dramatic, you're unstable, you're paranoid. Notice something? Every label shifts the blame from what's being perceived to the perceiver. It's a perfect defense mechanism. If people can convince you that your perception is flawed, they never have to look at the truth you've uncovered. And that's where the slow erosion of self begins, when you start believing them. When you start doubting your clarity, when you begin to wonder if maybe you are too much. But the real danger isn't that you see too much. It's that you might forget how to carry what you see. And that's where the story deepens, because perception, if held unconsciously, doesn't just isolate you or make others turn against you. It can start to consume you. There's another layer to this danger, one that's quieter, harder to detect, but far more exhausting. It's what happens when your sensitivity becomes porous, when you're not just seeing others' emotions, but absorbing them. You walk into a room feeling perfectly fine, and 20 minutes later, you're anxious or sad or inexplicably heavy. You leave wondering, what's wrong with me? But the truth is, maybe nothing's wrong with you at all. Maybe you've simply picked up what everyone else is trying to hide. And if you do this often enough, if you absorb enough of other people's pain, fear, and confusion, you start to lose track of what actually belongs to you. Your inner world becomes crowded. Voices that aren't yours, emotions that don't originate from you, confusion that was never meant to be carried by you. It's like trying to listen to your own voice in a crowded room full of people talking at once. Eventually, you forget what your voice even sounds like. I've spoken with people who live this way, and they often say the same haunting thing. I feel like I'm disappearing. They don't mean it metaphorically, they mean it literally, like their sense of self is dissolving, one emotional absorption at a time. They can't tell where they end and the rest of the world begins. And that is the fourth danger of seeing what others don't, losing your center. Because when your perception is wide open, when you're constantly tuned into everyone else's emotional frequency, your own signal gets lost in the noise. This is why many perceptive, empathic people burn out. It's not that they care too much, it's that they care without boundaries. They mistake their awareness for responsibility. They see pain and think, I have to fix this. They sense suffering and think, I must help. They notice dysfunction and think, it's my job to heal this. And this is where the spiral begins, not in seeing too clearly, but in believing you must act on everything you see. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're walking beside a river and you notice the water is muddy. You can see it clearly, others may not. Now you have a choice. You can jump into the river, thrash around, and try to scoop the mud out with your hands, exhausting yourself and stirring the water up even more. Or you can simply note, the river's muddy right now. You wait, you watch. And in time, the water settles on its own. The water doesn't need your panic to clear. It needs stillness. That's what most people with deep perception need to learn. Stillness. Because the danger of clear seeing isn't the seeing itself. It's the compulsion to interfere, the belief that awareness must always lead to action. But that's not awareness, that's anxiety disguised as purpose. When you stop trying to fix everything you perceive, when you simply observe without grasping or controlling, something remarkable happens. Your perception becomes cleaner, sharper. You begin to sense truth without drowning in it, and others start to relax around you. Why? Because you no longer need them to be different. You no longer make your peace dependent on their awakening. Think about this. When you meet someone who truly sees you, sees your pain, your contradictions, your hidden fears, and yet doesn't demand that you change. How does that feel? It feels like freedom, doesn't it? Like finally being allowed to just be. That's what clear seeing can become when it matures. Not a burden, not a curse, but a gift, one that frees rather than exposes. Because seeing clearly doesn't have to mean doing something about everything you see. Sometimes it means holding space for things to unfold naturally. Let's be clear though, this doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you turn cold or detached. It means you understand the difference between compassionate awareness and compulsive fixing. The first allows you to be present and grounded. The second consumes you. If you use your clarity to judge others, to feel superior, or to justify your isolation, then yes, it will destroy you. You'll turn your insight into a weapon, and people will flee from your sharpness. But if you can see without condemning, if you can hold what you perceive lightly, then your awareness becomes something gentle, almost healing. You see people exactly as they are, and in that acceptance, they begin to feel safe. And safety, ironically, is the soil where true change begins to grow. You see, awareness alone doesn't transform people, but being fully seen without judgment does. This is what it means to carry clear seeing consciously, to transform your perception from a sword into a lantern. Still, to do this, you must first reclaim your center, and that means learning how to be with yourself again. Because the more sensitive you are to the world, the more time you must spend alone. Real solitude, not scrolling through your phone alone, not numbing out with distractions, but actual psychological stillness. You have to sit long enough for the emotional noise you've absorbed to fade. Like muddy water settling, you need time to let the emotions that aren't yours sink to the bottom so you can finally see what's real, what belongs to you. In that stillness, something powerful happens. You begin to trust your perception again, not to react, not to rescue, but simply to know. And from that knowing, a quiet confidence emerges, a deep understanding that, yes, you see the truth, but not every truth demands your intervention. You may see that your friend's relationship is falling apart. You may sense your co-worker's despair. You may recognize the dysfunction in your family long before anyone else dares to speak it aloud. And yet, you can choose to do nothing. Not because you're indifferent, but because you understand something most people don't. People awaken when they're ready, not when you need them to. Problems resolve when the conditions are right, not when you decide they should. Your job isn't to fix what you see. Your job is to remain awake, to keep your inner vision clear, and to carry it without collapsing under its weight. Because that's what wisdom really is, not the ability to see everything, but the ability to handle what you see. And that's where we begin to approach something profound, a way of living in the world that allows you to see everything without being destroyed by it. So here we are, at the heart of it all. The danger of seeing what others don't is real. It can isolate you, exhaust you, even turn you into a target for other people's denial. But it doesn't have to destroy you. Because the problem isn't the seeing, it's how you carry it. When perception matures, when it's grounded in wisdom instead of anxiety, it stops being a curse and starts becoming something luminous, something steady, quiet, and alive. The people who thrive with this kind of clarity have learned something vital: how to see without being consumed by what they see. They've learned how to stay connected to themselves while remaining open to others. They've discovered what it means to have boundaries, not walls that shut people out, but clear lines that keep their own center intact. They live in the world, but not of it. They can sense pain without drowning in it. They can witness chaos without becoming chaotic. They can hold truth without trying to force it on anyone. And this is the art of conscious perception. Now, how do you develop that? How do you reach that kind of steadiness? It begins, as all deep work does, in solitude. Not in loneliness, not in withdrawal, but in silence. Real silence. The kind that allows your inner noise to settle until you can hear your own thoughts again. You spend enough time alone, and you start to feel where you end and the world begins. You start to notice which feelings are actually yours and which ones you've been carrying for others. That's how you reclaim your selfhood, by remembering your own emotional signature. Then comes the next step: learning to trust your perception without being ruled by it. Yes, you see the cracks beneath the surface. You sense the pain people are hiding. You recognize the dysfunctions that others refuse to name. All of that might be true. But the question isn't whether you see correctly. The question is, what will you do with that awareness? And sometimes, more often than not, the wisest, kindest, most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Just watch. Just hold the space. You wait until life itself brings the truth into the open, because it always does. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you patient. Because you understand now that people don't change when you think they should, they change when they're ready. And readiness can't be forced. You can't rush awareness into someone who's not ready to see. You can't make consciousness bloom before it's time. What you can do is embody it, quietly, steadily, in the way you live. This is how your awareness becomes a gift instead of a burden. You stop using it to fix the world, and you start using it to understand it. You start realizing that being awake in a sleeping world isn't about shaking everyone else awake. It's about holding your own wakefulness with grace. Because that's the paradox of consciousness. When you stop trying to change people, they often begin to change on their own. They feel safer around you. They feel seen, but not judged. They start to relax in your presence. And in that relaxation, something within them begins to open. That's the real influence of clear seeing. It doesn't demand. It doesn't force. It invites. It's like a light left on in a dark room. You don't have to drag people toward it. You just let it shine. And those who are ready, they'll find their way to it, slowly, naturally. Now, I want to make something very clear. I'm not suggesting you become detached, emotionless, or indifferent. I'm not saying you stop caring about people. I'm saying care wisely. Care in a way that doesn't destroy you. Care without making other people's pain your own. Care without believing that you must carry what they refuse to carry. Because if you keep taking on what's not yours, you won't be able to hold what is. Your clarity is not meant to make you a savior. It's meant to make you conscious. And consciousness doesn't mean fixing everything you see. It means being able to see it all without losing your peace. That's what mastery looks like. To see the truth clearly, but to stay centered. To understand deeply, but to remain kind. To feel fully, but to keep your boundaries intact. And eventually, something beautiful begins to happen. You start to meet others who see as you do. People who live in this strange, heightened state of awareness, who feel the undercurrents, who sense the unsaid, who understand without explanation. When that happens, when two clear-seeing souls find each other, something shifts. You realize you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're simply awake in a world that's mostly asleep. And there are others awake too. When you find them, you'll know. Conversations flow differently. Silence feels safe. There's no need to dim your perception or translate your intuition. You can just be. And together, that's how consciousness expands, not through shouting or saving, but through quiet recognition. One awake soul meeting another. That's how light spreads. Gently, patiently, like dawn creeping over a sleeping city. So yes, the danger of seeing what others don't is real. It can isolate you, confuse you, make you doubt yourself. It can fill you with other people's emotions until you can't hear your own. It can tempt you to carry the whole world's pain until you collapse under its weight. But it can also be the beginning of something extraordinary. If you learn to hold your awareness with wisdom, if you learn to protect your center without closing your heart, if you learn to see without the need to control, then your seeing becomes not a curse, but a form of love. Not the sentimental kind, the deep kind, the kind that says, I see you exactly as you are, and I'm not here to change you. I'm just here to be awake with you. And maybe that's all the world really needs. A few people willing to live with eyes wide open, not trying to fix everything, not trying to force everyone awake, but simply refusing to fall back asleep. Because when you do that, when you remain awake and at peace in a sleeping world, something profound happens. You become a living invitation. An invitation for others to open their eyes if and when they're ready. And if they never are, that's okay too. Your task was never to wake the world. Your task was to stay awake within it. The danger is real, but so is the possibility. the possibility of living consciously without being consumed, the possibility of seeing deeply without drowning, the possibility of carrying your awareness as a light, soft, steady, and true. That is the art of living with eyes wide open in a world that prefers to keep them closed.